Hello.
Hello.
My question raises the issue of trauma. People having survived earthquakes, crimes, car accidents. What would you recommend for their practice? I'm a crime survivor and sometimes dealing with heavy pain body attacks or difficult emotions during meditations. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to sit again?
Yeah.
Because we never know how long the answer is going to be. It could be a minute, it could be 30 minutes. It may well be that for humans who have suffered trauma, catastrophic events, anything of that kind, deep suffering, it may well be that, not necessarily, but it may be that during this lifetime they will not become entirely free of the remnants or the energy left behind by the trauma. But the important thing is the realization that there is in you a dimension that is beyond anything that could ever suffer. And you have to get in touch with that in you that has always been and will always be and always is the transcendent, the formless dimension within you, the formless essence of who you are. And of course this is our entire reason for being here, is to go deep enough within where you encounter that presence or that spaciousness. Within that presence or spaciousness, it can still happen that the old pain from time to time arises, or it could happen that the presence gradually consumes, burns up the accumulated pain from the past, the pain body. Either way is fine, even if the presence does not completely burn up the accumulated pain or suffering, and which therefore then occasionally resurfaces. At least you know your essential being to be the spaciousness. So from the difference from not having access to the transcendent dimension within yourself and having access is, when you don't have access to it, you're completely in the grip of the pain. It occupies you completely. You become it. It may also use your mind to renew itself, because then you remember what happened, and then by using those thoughts you feed the old pain through the memory of what happened. And so you are trapped in it. It has a grip on you. Now, when you have access to the transcendent dimension, you realize that the pain is there, but you are there. So here's the pain, and you are the space. And the more you practice, the more you realize you are the space around it. Or another useful practice is to, when you feel it, to accept what you feel at any given moment, the present moment, accept when it arises, but know that it is the old pain, and the acceptance itself creates the space. And so you more and more who you are is not lodged in, identified with the pain, but who you are. So what I'm saying is the sense of self begins to move out of the pain, although the pain may still be there. The sense of self shifts from being identified with the pain and the suffering me to being the space behind or around it. And it's a very subtle thing. You have to practice. The important thing is practice being the space when you are not, at times when you are not in the grip of the pain, because then you need to see if you can be the space in ordinary circumstances and surroundings, and especially here, of course, a great opportunity for disidentifying from all the mental, emotional content that still lives in you, some fine, some painful, some extremely painful, but to disidentify from it so that it no longer has a sense of self in it, including all thoughts. Thoughts still arise, but without the me in them. Emotions still come, painful emotions come, but they become divested of the sense of self. And that's a big difference between feeling that you are the pain, it has taken possession of you completely, and it can easily define your sense of who you are, especially in the case of deep trauma. The pain can easily define your sense of identity. So I have encountered people, I'm sure it's not the case with you, but I have had sometimes questioners and people who have asked about their deep suffering, and they were so identified with their old pain. When I suggested a way of going beyond it, they got angry because they felt that their sense of self had been threatened. And then in a few cases when I pointed that out to them, they realized. In one or two cases they didn't want to realize. But when I pointed out, can you feel that you are angry now? Because I just made a suggestion that it may be possible to, not perhaps to eliminate the pain at once, but to transcend it. And then so the egoic sense of self, because here too, whatever you identify with becomes part of ego. And it can happen that people identify with some pain or something they suffered in the past. In fact, it's almost a normal process. And it needs to be pointed out. You need to realize that is not who you are. And compared to who you are, one could say it's like a bad dream compared to who you really are. You are beyond that and have always been beyond that. You have to access that in you which cannot be touched by that. And it doesn't mean you cut yourself off. As you know, the difference is make sure your sense of identity is not in the old pain. That is very important, because if it is, you will always fight any attempt to get rid of it. It's an unconscious attempt of the ego to survive. Very normal egoic motivation. It wants to survive. So the same thing can happen with deeply held viewpoints or opinions. If you have certain, whatever it is, political, religious, or whatever thing you might have seen on the internet, which suddenly has taken possession of your mind, and become a kind of mental virus in your head that has taken over 75% of your thought processes, and then your identity is in it and you don't want to let go, or the ego doesn't want to let go. So presence, access the presence when the pain is not obvious at those times, so that when it comes, you can continue to be there as the accepting witness or presence behind and around it. So when it comes, you accept it. It forces you to go beyond identification with form. And a point will come where you are thankful for anything, even though it seemed at the time terrible, for anything that forced you to disidentify from the egoic sense of self. That's why retrospectively often people become thankful for their suffering, but then you have to realize you can't just go through the motions. It has to be a true thing, and that may happen to you also. That's the important thing, is that the old pain is no longer able to use your thought processes and control your thinking, so that you can feel when it comes in waves, occasionally it comes up, so that you can be there as the presence and accept it without it moving into your mind and make you think the memories of what happened and so on, all kinds of thoughts associated with the energy of the pain. That keeps it in place and renews it all the time, and then you get into a vicious circle. So, and for this is why it's helpful to be here, as you sit here, even if you don't do anything. Presence power grows in you, so it comes more and more, and then that begins to surround, so to speak, that begins to surround the accumulated pain. It may dissolve it, don't know, but even if it doesn't, basically, if you're no longer self-identified with it, you are free already. So it's the strange thing is, and you may not realize it until later, so I'm not trying to convince you that what I say is true, that it is often humans who go through intense pain of that kind, and sometimes already children have to go through it. It happens. It's often those that becomes their opening into the transcendent dimension, because the pain is too much and then the crack opens in the ego. The opposite can also happen, that the pain solidifies the ego, and then the human being becomes totally enclosed in their painful identity, and it goes like, or it could, potentially it can always be the opening, the crack in the shell of the ego. So there may be quite a few of you, I don't know what the percentage is, who have suffered traumatic events, and all of you have had certain forms of pain in your life, as a child, as an adult. My childhood there was not one traumatic event, but the whole thing was traumatic. So it wasn't concentrated in one event, it was dispersed, not as intense as one traumatic event would be, but dispersed over a period of 15 years of my life, and especially the first 12 years when my parents divorced at the age when I was 10, and then for 2 or 3 years after that it was still very unpleasant every day. Nobody's fault. Every human being acts according to their level of consciousness. So no matter where you look on the surface level, you're not going to arrive. And the Buddha recognized that because he said, wherever you go and whatever you do, you will encounter suffering. Oh. And that, if only read as a statement, sounds very pessimistic or nihilistic, which means you are condemned to perpetual frustration. So other translations of the term that the Buddha used, which is dukkha, other possible translations of that term would be misery, unsatisfactoriness, unhappiness, frustration. Nothing is ever good enough. And that manifests in some people more extremely than in others, that state of consciousness. But in many people it manifests as a continuous discontent, a continuous sense of something wrong here, except for brief moments, brief interludes. You've just arrived at your vacation destination until then that feeling comes up again. So dukkha is a very profound realization that on that level there is no ultimate fulfillment or happiness. And so you cannot look for it in the future, because when you look at it on the surface level of life, to fulfillment through a situation, through a new place, a new activity, a new way of relating to people suddenly becoming important, getting recognition by others. All these things are surface phenomena, which are dukkha. And so I've met some people, famous and wealthy people, who have actually achieved all that, and then they realized it got worse, because they could no longer be under the delusion that when they finally have enough money, they'll be free. And so finally they got all the money and they could go anywhere, and they tried it out, and wherever they went, they found themselves. And they found their own state of consciousness, the unrealized state of consciousness. And wherever they went, because they found themselves, they found frustration. And they were unhappy sitting in their private jet. And that's a good point to reach, but the good news is you don't need a private jet to get to that realization. Because otherwise the chances for most of us would be slim if realization were only possible through the acquisition of a private jet, or at least a timeshare in a jet, which you can buy, but that's still very expensive. So the surface level is not to be totally denied, because undoubtedly you exist here on the level of form also, and there are things to do and to acquire on the surface level as part of who you are on the level of form. So you need to be able to operate well on the level of form, learning new things, trying out new things, creating things on the level of form, whatever it is that you may want to create, or simply being engaged in certain activities on the level of form, having a personality that's not going to totally evaporate, so there's still things that are in you. You need to honor also that level of who you are, which does not mean being totally absorbed by it, trapped in it, and only know yourself as that. So to be active, that happens on the surface level of life, that's fine. If you live in a place that is not the best, that perhaps it's noisy or not nice enough, why not see if you can find a better place to live or get a better job? These things still operate. Where it doesn't work is expecting some ultimate fulfillment through whatever you achieve. And then because if you expect some ultimate fulfillment, ultimate happiness, then you're telling the world in whatever form it manifests to you, you're telling the world, make me happy. You place expectations upon the world that it cannot meet. So the world includes whatever happens to you, whatever other people, places, activities, relationships. That's all the world, what you own, experiences on the level of form. All that is fine, is part of the dance of life. But if you expect it to make you happy, it's frustrating. If you no longer expect these things to make you happy, they actually are quite pleasant. You can experience many things as very pleasant things. You visit new places, it's nice. You don't expect that some place you should find some ultimate fulfillment just because you moved from A to B. Or you meet a new person, a relationship, without placing an impossible demand upon the other person. Looking for the ultimate spiritual partner to make me happy. Please apply here. Send your photo too. So when you don't have the expectation that this person should make you happy, then the relationship actually works much better. But how can you not have that expectation? Only if at the same time that you operate on the level of form, you also are connected with the essence of who you are. You also realize experientially in the present moment the meaning of the letter E, the inscription, you are. So what the inscription is telling you is to have that realization in the background of your life, so to speak, continuously. To have that inner spaciousness continuously as a backdrop, so to speak, to your life. So when you do things, not just when you meditate, not just, although it's nice to have glimpses of it or realizations when you I mean, there are people who've been meditating for 20 years and never even had a glimpse of that, because they always try to get somewhere through their meditation, not realizing the meditation is not a doing. So if you practice meditation as a doing, you'll continuously miss it, because doing implies you want to get somewhere, which means it keeps you trapped on the surface level. Because only on the surface level you can get somewhere. On the depth level you already are somewhere, or nowhere. On the depth level, that's the letter E, you are the beingness, to know, and that is the inner spaciousness where that consciousness that you are transcends the person. And that is where the sense of being at home, or to put it in a more conventional language, to be comfortable, there's an expression in English, to be comfortable in your own skin. Of course, it's more than that, it's deeper than in your own skin, but it points to that, to feel that sense of rootedness in something indestructible. And that is knowing that you are. And it's nothing to do with thinking. It's not a concept. It is knowing yourself as consciousness.
My question is, how do you do the power of now for business? And specifically, I understand this with our personal lives, but in business, I find we're making future goals and plans and such, and trying to align my team with those, and when things don't work out. So how do we sort of use what we're learning here in a business context?
Right. Well, in business you set certain goals that you want to achieve, and then you take action towards achieving those goals. And in the meantime, there's a lot of interaction with other people who are also working as a team with you, and there's probably also perhaps interaction with other business organizations. So first of all, the goal setting and the journey towards achieving particular goals that the organization has set itself. Before I continue, may I ask what kind of business?
It's an online business.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it do?
So we sell information products, business training products.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that is potentially a helpful thing for people. Once you have a goal, you will find as you pursue your goal as a team together, continuously obstacles arise as you go towards it. Whenever you create something new, you will find it is rarely a very smooth progression. You have to overcome obstacles on the way in the form of people or situations that go wrong. This doesn't work, or try something else. The important thing is not to place an excessive emphasis on the achievement, which is the desired outcome, but to be as present in the doing as you can, so that the doing does not become stressful. almost every business is, people who are working in it are under stress, I believe. There may be some that are not, but stress is not the way in which you want to conduct your business, because the environment is toxic. A stressful environment is toxic. So when you can always tell, is the goal something that is for the greater good, or is it an ego-inspired goal? Are you looking, this applies both in a business environment, and it applies equally when you have personal goals. It's the same process is involved. When an obstacle arises, to immediately face the obstacle, which comes in the form of a situation, something not working, something going wrong, somebody trying to sabotage you, perhaps from some other organization, who knows what happens, to never react against the obstacle as if this should not be happening, to immediately to face it and see what is the way beyond it. How can I either dissolve it, bypass it, or use it? What is, so that you don't enter a state of reactivity when obstacles appear on your path. That's important for anybody who pursues a goal. What is your relationship to difficulties and obstacles that arise as you travel towards your goal? And the only conscious way of dealing with obstacles is not to react as if these obstacles should not be happening. So you have to look into what your relationship is with arising obstacles on your path. And this is not just in business, but anyway. The unconscious person in business or elsewhere gets upset, angry, aggressive, despondent, very stressed every time something isn't going the way they want it to go. And immediately dysfunctional inner states arise. And therefore they experience, there are companies where the entire environment is toxic because everybody lives in that way. And ego is also a thing that arises. As much as possible, be aware so that you don't seek ego satisfaction in the doing. There's a personal ego, then one person can sabotage another person in the same company because you are not free of ego identification. So it's very important to be aware so that you do not seek ego satisfaction through what you are doing. Be present in what you do so that the doing becomes joyful rather than placing so much focus on what you want to achieve that the journey becomes very stressful. Then nothing is worth achieving if the journey is stressful. You might, let's say you spent a year or 2 years with some scheme that you want, a new business model or whatever it is. What is the state of consciousness, the collective state of consciousness while you are traveling towards your goal? Is it stressed? Is it stressful? Is there a lot of conflict? Or is it a common enterprise? And is the doing joyful? And it can only be joyful if you place more importance in what you're doing in this present moment than attempting to arrive at some future point. You know where you want to go to, but as the Bhagavad Gita says, do not be too attached to the outcome. Then it's much more likely that the outcome will be good. But if you have an excessive attachment, you need to achieve that. If you have an excessive attachment to outcome, then the journey becomes very stressful. That's something that is important and I'm talking not from personal experience because I'm not in business, but I have spoken to people, quite a few, who are in the business environment. And so I've been to some relatively conscious companies. They invited me. Of course, unconscious companies wouldn't invite me. And I have spoken to them, and I'm surprised that these conscious companies actually, it's a joy to be there for all the. Do the employees, whoever they are, or their partners, do they enjoy being there? That is vital. Sounds very simple. Or are they so focused on some kind of extra achievement that the doing is not enjoyable at all? Do they love being there? What is the relationship with you and your colleagues, partners? And those things are vitally important. And I don't know how many employees you have. Again, it's important to make the environment as pleasant for them as possible. Don't encouraging people to. I'm sure if you're in that kind of environment, that is probably more conscious than many others, and you are here, that's a good sign. So I believe your company is already relatively conscious. Is there any particular problem still that you think is something that you have not been able to go beyond?
No, I just, as I'm trying to become more present myself, because a lot of what you talked about before, like that's when I first got into business, it was for ego satisfaction. It was because I was trying to achieve things probably to make myself feel better.
Yes.
And now I've realized that doesn't work.
Yes.
So now I'm working on it personally, and I'm trying to transfer these skills into the business. So you talked a little bit about that. And I guess the biggest takeaway I had is it's okay to have goals. It's okay to project into the future as part of business and knowing what you're going. I'm the type of person that's like planning and planning everything down to the detail. And I realize that can be counterproductive, and to know where we need to go. And then as challenges come up, which is normal, to then become more present.
Yes. Welcome the challenges rather than resent the challenges.
With the team.
Yes,
with
together.
The whole team, yeah.
Yes. So you can teach them. So I'm sure you have a lot to teach them. So it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. So you will probably grow into something big. And then invite me and I'll talk to you all. Thank you. And the past, everything dissolves, and then it becomes the past, which is a memory of a present moment in the now. You talk about the past, you're remembering something that happened, but when it happened, it was the now. And it's still the now. So, but that absorbs human attention completely for unawakened humans. My past is my life. And then you look back on your past and you come to some kind of conclusion about yourself, your identity, and your life. Well, that's my life. For many people, it's a mixed bag. They're not completely It's not the greatest, because there are things that are not going well in my life. It could be your financial situation, it could be your relationship situation, your professional situation, your living situation, your health situation. Somewhere, other people, oh my God, problems. You can look in your life, where are the main problems in your life? There's somewhere there, what I've mentioned. Hardly any human is free of experience this. One or two of these dimensions is problematic at any given moment in time. So it's either, and if you, for a moment, everything is going well, let's say you have achieved great professional success, your income is great, you have a wonderful place to live, your family is doing well, you have two healthy and intelligent and wonderful children, and your wife is perfect, and your health is just great, and your body looks fantastic, and you're great looking. Is that possible? It may be possible for a brief moment, but not for long. So if that's the case with you, just wait a little, and something will pop up out of nowhere and challenge you and say, oh my God. And especially you just solve something here and then something pops up there. Even if you practice positive thinking, which is a great thing to do, it will improve your life considerably, but it does not mean you will not be challenged by life again. You will experience the opposite, that every situation contains opposites. You gain something here, but you lose something there. And you will experience being challenged by life. And you can't get away from it. That's the weird thing. So if all is going perfectly in your life right now, it's unlikely that there's anybody here to whom this is happening temporarily, because why would you come here? Everything is perfectly fine. So you get back into your big car and have a big meal and drink, and then you go to your radiant family in your beautiful home. Everything is so satisfying. It doesn't work. It's not. So the being challenged does not stop even when you begin lucid living, which means what we are talking about here, to bring consciousness into your daily life by not losing touch with the underlying awareness or presence within you, which we might call still a field of let's say, a field of highly intelligent presence that underlies it all. And that it is a stillness, but it's alive, vibrantly alive, a stillness within you. Underneath the personality, not separate from it, but underneath it. So one could almost say that, that you as the person or the personality exists on the surface of being, so to speak, in the same way that a wave or ripple exists on the surface of the ocean. Ripples everywhere. And I often use this analogy because it's quite helpful, because that's actually how it is. You exist on the surface of being as a physical entity and a psychological entity. And as such, you are a ripple on the surface of the ocean. A ripple that has forgotten its nature, not only its connectedness with the ocean, but its absolute oneness with the ocean. The ripple is the ocean, ocean temporarily manifesting as a ripple. Look at me, says the ripple. and looks at other ripples and fears other ripples and complains about other ripples, and then seeking out some satisfaction on the surface of the ripple existence, never getting a feeling of home, of having arrived. Briefly, yes, briefly, but usually it means there's a lowering of consciousness. I mentioned drinking alcohol, for example. You drink a couple of glasses, you feel a little better. Why do you feel a little better? Because it slows down your thinking process, which sustains the person, the problematic entity, and so that slows down towards. And you suddenly, you can observe it in people when they have a couple of drinks. Not everybody I come to. There's another possibility what could happen too, but let's stay with that for a moment. You have a couple of drinks and you feel life is suddenly lighter. You feel like singing. You might even sing. And they say, I need another one, because if 2 is good, 3 must be better. And if 3 is better, then 4 surely. And finally, you're moving more and more towards unconsciousness, and then you fall off the chair. So that's not the way to go. So yes, humans are longing to become free of the self, and then many of them, whether it's unconscious, they go to drugs to experience a little bit of that. Some release from their problematics and almost continuously unsatisfying existence. Continuous sense of lack, continuous sense of not enough, something missing, of discontent, of restlessness. Even youngsters have that. And they need some substance. They need to take something in to feel that there's something missing, and that slows down the apparatus of your thinking mind that creates continuous unease and discontent, and suddenly you feel, or you smoke a little bit, or go, feel so much better. Yes, it is you becoming free of yourself temporarily, but I'm not necessarily saying never do this, but that's not the ultimate way. It's not a regressive movement. We don't want to fall below thinking. We don't, because animals and plants, they are not burdened with this self. They are not burdened with incessant unconscious conceptual thinking. They are conscious. There's a consciousness there that operates. Oh, yes. Can you speak about how to be in this world with this constant push for connectivity? How did we get to the most profound things from a relatively simple question? Oh yes, we talked about doing and being, without feeling that being present is another thing to do. How to be in this world without this constant push for connectivity? Well, the first thing is you turn off your push notifications. That's already a big step forward. And you need to be disciplined in the use of your device, your phone, whatever, tablet, phone, so that it doesn't take you over, because it's simply an extension of the mind. And if it wasn't enough before we invented these devices, humans had already been taken over by their minds. Even 2,000 years ago, not as much as now, but even 2,000 years ago, Jesus said, "Why are you always thinking about tomorrow? Why are you always worried about the next thing? Look at the flower, look how it lives, in total alignment with the present moment, and it's being sustained by the one consciousness." That's my translation of the... So already then, humans had been taken over by mind, but even more so since then, mind has proliferated, and then the clever human mind came up with these devices. Said, let's extend ourselves into the realm of things, and then we can create this, which is an extension of the human mind. So when you might have noticed, when you're with yourself, you have the voice in the head, unless you begin to awaken, in which case you're able to experience spaces of alert, still presence. It's beautiful. But otherwise, you have this thing, commenting, talking, arguing. And then this becomes a burden for many people. Of course it is a burden, because a lot of the stuff it says is actually not pleasant. And so you experience it as a burden, and since you derive your sense of identity from it, it becomes yourself. This talking voice, you think that's you. It becomes the self. And you walk around with this burden of the self. And in order to unburden yourself, one thing you can do, you think you can do, is you can watch the television, or you can go on to watch. There are countless things that you can watch on the little screen. The entire world's knowledge at your fingertips. And the moment you watch the screen, whether it's television or whatever screen, you might have noticed that your so-called own thought processes come to a stop. So to some extent, you're free of the self. This is why people sometimes find watching television relaxing. Say, okay, I just need to relax now, let's turn it on. By this they mean, while they watch the television screen, they are not burdened by their self-induced thought processes. What they do, however, they replace their own thoughts with the collective thoughts. So you're not in a state of thoughtless awareness when you watch television or you watch something on the screen. You absorb the thoughts from there into your mind, and you link into. So for people often in a state of semi or hypnosis when they watch, and it kind of paralyzes you. It can also happen with the screen, with television already started, of course. I don't know whenever 60 years ago, whenever television started, and you go, and so your mind is just absorbing whatever is playing. It's the TV mind, which is receiving stuff from wherever it comes from, is going into your mind, and you become no longer thinking your own thoughts. Occasionally you might, you say, oh, this guy is so stupid, and then you're watching again. And then another thought, why am I watching this rubbish? Half an hour later, this is so awful. But you can't turn it off. Here's the remote. Let's just try one more channel. There might be something else there. Oh no, that's stupid. Try one more. This is how an addict behaves. And the device is even more addictive because you carry them with you. And you may have to admit that there is an addiction in you. Not everybody here, but quite a few. It would be almost normal to feel this draw towards it, and you use it even when you don't need to use it. That's the amazing thing. When you're standing at the elevator, waiting, so another person is standing next to you, and he or she is pulling out the phone, and then you pull out yours. You don't know why. Or anywhere you're ordering a tea or coffee somewhere, and you're standing in line, and if you look around, there's almost nobody, and probably nobody, who is not looking at this little thing. This is scary. Zombie-like. Now, if somebody from the past, the so-called past, a time traveler from the past came here, and even not the distant past, let's just say even 20 years ago, and he arrived and would see in the streets, in restaurants, in cafes, everywhere, in public transport, people are walking around with these things, staring at these things. So what's happened? Something has happened to humanity. They've all become zombies. Something terrible must have happened. What was that? These are wonderful devices, the incredible possibilities of having access to all kinds of knowledge, but there's always the downside. There's a huge, huge downside to it. They are addictive. They stimulate the mind. The thing you want to become free from, you want to become free of mind, and this will prevent you from becoming free of mind. So as you need to be disciplined enough to not automatically look at it whenever there's a moment and you're waiting for something or whatever it is, and there's no need to check these things. I don't even know what they are, but I just know that Facebook is the biggest thing, and then there's the Instagram and Snapchat and countless names, and some people have all of them on their phones, and you need to know the latest thing. Crazy. So, but if you detect the addiction in yourself, then you have to first of all admit that you are addicted. Don't deny it. You know Alcoholics Anonymous. The first thing when you go there, you have to say, I am an alcoholic. Now, some people say, well, that's not a good thing because your identity is not being an alcoholic. Of course not. So it could be misunderstood. But your nature is not being an alcoholic. It is your present condition is that. But to recognize the problem, the difficulty, the challenge is just you stated, yes, I'm addicted to this phone, and I choose not to be addicted. And then you can be the only one in many places who is not looking, in waiting rooms, waiting in line, whatever it is, waiting on the phone for somebody to talk to you, and in the meantime, but you use this beautiful thing of just being present, and you look around and you step out of thinking, and all the others are still in the hypnotic state. So practice not to use it unless there is a true purpose. If you want the answer to something in a conversation, there's a what is what, then you can get the knowledge. You have the world's encyclopedia there, then you can look it up. Okay, that's how it is, and then you put it away again. There are some apps that are meditation apps. I want to check them out a bit more. I have a few on my phone, but I haven't tried them yet. They've been there for a year or two. And that would be something great. It transforms something that otherwise would amplify your mind. It transforms it into its opposite.
I love you. So in talking about thinking, I know this has an obvious answer, and I'm actually asking beyond this. But where do our thoughts come from? So oftentimes I'll have thoughts and I recognize them as even not my own, or possibly patterns that have existed for years and years. Jealousy thoughts or competitive thoughts or the thoughts of being threatened and fear. But truthfully, is this something is waking us up in the middle of the night that you were just talking about? What is that? Is it just part of the condition of being alive?
Thank you. The Buddha was asked a similar question. I'll tell you what he said, but then I will answer it because he didn't.
Thank you.
Somebody asked him a question like that, and he gave a parable. He said, somebody shot you with an arrow, you've got an arrow stuck in your body. And before you remove it, you're trying to find out, where did that arrow come from? Before I remove it, I need to know who shot it and why and where it came from. Let's examine this in more detail. And that was his answer. What he was saying was, our main concern should be to remove the arrow instead of trying to find out where it all started. How did it all start? Where did it all originate? That was his teaching was very practical, totally practical. Not all of Buddhism is that practical anymore. Some of it still remains practical compared to other traditions. But in the very beginning of the Buddhist teaching was just totally practical. Remove the arrow. The arrow, of course, stands for suffering, any form of suffering that is self-generated through the mind. And, okay, so that was his answer. Now, of course, I agree with that, and I'm sure we all do. Thought, going a little bit beyond it, thought is, there's such a thing as the collective mind, and so many thoughts are not your thoughts, really. They arise in the collective mind. They are energy fields or energetic entities that one could almost think of them as little bubbles floating around. They may not be literally true. I haven't actually seen any bubbles, but little bubbles, thought forms floating around. And if the thought form discovers any resonance with anything inside you, for example, any form of negativity, and then there's a thought form in the collective mind, an even heavier thought form of negativity floating around. Just a slight irritation about what somebody said today. And then there's another thought form that resonates with that negativity, and then that bubble comes plop. And before you know it, the irritation has become something bigger. So you connect with the universal mind, and it moves through you. So when we deal with our so-called our own minds, we're far more than our own minds, and whatever awareness arises in you is not just your benefit, it has an impact on the totality of the collective mind. When awareness arises in you, it means awareness is arising in the collective mind of humanity. So it's not just a personal thing. In the same way that any thinking that takes possession of your mind is not really personal. There is no personal thought as such. It pretends to be personal. It's the human collective mind. In the same way, of course, any emotion generated by that is not, it looks like my emotion, but it's either it's anger or it's sadness or it's jealousy or it's whatever it is. And that's basically, it's the same in everybody when it arises. It attaches itself to slightly different stories in the mind of why I'm angry, but the anger is anger, human anger. So, again, it's not yours. You pick it up, and then it gets hold of you, and then many humans live virtually with a mind that has taken possession of them, pretends to be them, and they're stuck with it without even knowing it. If they knew it, they would be the beginning of freedom. They don't know it, and if you tell them they get angry, but they don't, the mind does, because it feels threatened. So there's still humans who won't hear this, they can't hear this, because immediately they would feel threatened by it, because they're totally possessed by the mind. You can see how, for example, certain collective thought forms can take possession of an entire country, such as happened, for example, during communism, Soviet communism in Russia, Maoism in China, millions of people all thinking the same thing. But even in our society, it's not necessarily one monolithic thought form such as that, but there are different thought forms through the media become perpetuated, and without knowing it, often they are our most basic assumptions, how we interpret the universe and the world around us. Our basic assumption are thought forms that come out of the collective, have taken possession of us, and they're all forms that consciousness takes in the mind. And that's all fine in itself. It's fine if there is an awareness, but if thought is all there is, it becomes destructive and insane without awareness. Of course, your next question, if you want to carry that, is why? How did it all start? Where does it come from? And that's the arrow again.
Right. Yeah, in fact, my friend Jen and I use the phrase, when you ask why, that is the lie.
Yeah.
Just the need
Yes.
to let it go. But the thing that occurred when you shared your answer, thank you, is that the thinking isn't something I need to war against, but rather it's a tool. And it's showing me where I'm allowing myself to identify with something that I'm not,
Yes.
and thus identify with being separate
Yes.
from this one. So
Yes.
it's a wonderful tool
Yes.
that is ultimately powerless in the face of consciousness. Is that correct?
Yes, if you are identified with thinking, you say powerless. Yes, because you are not there. You are absent, virtually absent, or completely asleep when you're identified with thinking. So you're being run by patterns, or on the karmic collective patterns, mental patterns.
Right.
And so your true power comes as you wake up out of that.
Thanks, Eckhart.
Thank you. Emotions do not make their home in you. You could have, let's see, I don't remember the last time I was angry. I'll have to think. It's not that when you awaken that you no longer experience emotions. Certain emotions will still arise, but less than in the unawakened state. But certain emotions, such as when there's the death of a loved one, you will feel an emotion, you will weep, and you will experience that emotion. The Zen master who experienced probably the emotion that he experienced, that he detected through becoming aware of the palm of his hands becoming moist, was probably anxiety. But these are different things, different causal factors for these emotions. The Zen master was justified in saying that this shows me that I'm still in the conceptual mind, and I'm not free of role playing ultimately, because the person who came to him had a particular social role, and he proved that to be a reality. But on the whole, though, emotions are to be accepted and recognized as emotions. Every emotion that arises in you is something that you are aware of, and then you say, well, there it is. And the strange thing is, the more you live in acceptance of the present moment, the less will you experience negative emotions, because most negative emotions arise through non-acceptance of the isness of things, of the present moment. Some emotions may still be there, but rarely would you experience negative emotions. You may still, but they will be short-lived. Emotions do not make their home in you. You could have, let's see, I don't remember the last time I was angry. I'll have to think. I can't remember. It can't have been very long, but it can happen. But it's short-lived because the mind does not keep it alive. The emotion is there, and an emotion arises. It's certainly an emotion of deep sadness arose when my parents died. Within the space of 5 months, they both died in the same year, although they lived in different countries. And so I went to the funeral of my mother in the summer, and in the fall, suddenly my dad died, and I went to the funeral of my dad. And then I was able to experience the sadness, and I cried a few times. I sat with my mother's body, and I sat with my dad's body, and it was very clear that there was an emotion of pain, there was emotional pain, and it was also clear that there was a deep peace behind the pain. And this is what I described yesterday, or whenever it was, as the transcendent dimension, like the hint of a smile of the Buddha being in the background. That is, and that comes through acceptance that arises more quickly and more strongly. When you accept something, there's still the emotion on the surface, and you accept the emotion, and then there's a peace underneath it. It's two things that when I talk about them, they almost seem incompatible, but they are totally compatible. Now, without the transcendent dimension, it's a devastating experience. And without awareness, there are people who carry the sadness of the mourning of when somebody close to them dies. There are people who carry that not for a few months, they can carry it for years, because in the lack of awareness, it gets continuously revived, the emotion is fed again and again by mind activity. And then you think all those memories and all that's gone, all the times we spent together. 3 years after they die, you're still weeping at night because you remember all those times, and it's all gone, it's all dissolved, and you're continuously devastated. That becomes dysfunctional. And that arises because there is not enough awareness in you, so the emotion makes its home in you and starts to, it kind of says, oh, I like to be here, actually becomes incorporated into your pain body, and then you continuously suffer the same emotion, which in an aware person, the emotion has a certain lifespan, the sadness, and then it becomes transmuted. And then it becomes, sometimes I look at photos, my mom, my dad. My mother, when she died, I had to, within a space of a couple of days, I had to get rid of all her belongings because she lived in Europe. I could only spend a few days there. So I just rescued a few small items that I could take back home. One is a rug, and one is a little clock that she had had for 30 years. And so it's a little clock in a glass dome. And it's electric, but it has this revolving thing that goes. And I had that when I visited my mom once a year. I would hear that the room where I slept at my mom's place, I could hear the ticking of that clock around Christmas time. And I was there, I heard this tick, tick, tick. And now I have this clock at home, and it's still working. And this clock to me is the memory of my mother. When I look at it and I listen to the ticking noise, it's the memory of my mother. It is also a symbol of impermanence of all life forms. And once you accept the impermanence of all life forms, that brings about a deepening in you, because you see how fleeting all this is. And then suddenly you become deeper. And also, this little clock, which goes tick, 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 that symbolizes to me, the ticking is time, but in between the ticking there is silence. And that is the timeless dimension. So this clock is more than a clock to me. But when I look at this clock, I no longer experience any painful emotion. That is gone. I don't experience a painful emotion when I look at pictures of my mom or dad. I all experience a deep peace and a very strong awareness of the fleetingness of all life forms. And it's a beautiful, very deep and peaceful thing. So in the presence of awareness, certain emotions are natural and are actually fine, but they have a relatively short lifespan. They don't make their home in you. Similar is somebody makes you angry, somebody offends you, somebody does something to you or takes something away from you. You may feel an angry reaction. And that anger reaction has a lifespan. If there's awareness, suddenly you're aware that you are angry, but there it is, you are angry. And you might even shout something in your anger, and then you're aware, okay, there's the anger. And then you become aware of the anger directly, which means it cannot make its home in you, and then it becomes transmuted. It's not as quick as the duck that I describe in one of my books. When the duck gets into a fight with another duck, the fight doesn't last long, and the energy builds up, and every duck, after they separate, they stop fighting, gets up on the water a bit and flaps their wings vigorously, the duck. And then after that, the duck becomes completely peaceful again. So humans are not quite that quick, even aware humans. But metaphorically speaking, that's through awareness, you're able to, the emotion is released and then it leaves you. So certain emotions have their place and that's fine, but there are many, many emotions that are produced, negative emotions, that are produced by mental dysfunction, such as you wake up in the middle of the night and there's enormous anxiety and you start thinking about all the things that are going to go wrong, or you started thinking about the past and you have terrible regret and you have resentment and you have sadness and you're thinking and you feel more and more the emotion that corresponds to your thinking, and every night it happens. That is not the kind of emotion that is natural to you. It's not the kind of emotion, but you need to recognize, where does this come from? It's produced by my thoughts. I am producing this emotion every night when I can't sleep, and even during the daytime, I am producing this emotion. And then if there's enough awareness, in the moment of thinking those anxious thoughts, you suddenly know what you're doing. You suddenly realize what you're doing. And then you say, okay, you suddenly remember, oh, Eckhart talked about the inner body. What happens if I stop thinking these thoughts that are totally useless and completely unnecessary and harmful, actually? Why do I not instead choose to place my awareness in the inner body right now instead of thinking? So there's enough awareness, then you no longer produce all those emotions that are part of dysfunctional misuse of the mind, or rather being used by your mind. So all those emotions, as you become aware, you don't produce them anymore. Certain emotions remain, but their lifespan is short, and they are seen for what they are, and that's fine. So do not believe that you need to arrive at a state where you no longer experience any emotion whatsoever. So some emotions go with the human form, they're part of the human form. There's a story, I believe I quoted it in one of the books. One of the ancient Greek philosophers, he belonged to the school of Stoicism, which is a wonderful philosophy, but Marcus Aurelius' book, Meditations, is one of my favorite books, written 2,000 years ago, if you haven't read it. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, is a beautiful, beautiful book, but that's the school of Stoicism. There was one Stoic philosopher, I can't remember his name. People came to him and said, your son has just died in an accident. They were, my God, your son has died in an accident. He fell off the horse. And the Stoic philosopher said, I knew he was not immortal. Now, the question is, we cannot judge what he said because we do not know out of what state of consciousness these words arose. Perhaps there was an emotion, but he didn't express it. Perhaps he had already repressed all emotions. It's possible. I like to believe that he was aware and the emotion was in him, but he didn't express it. And the statement was a statement that came from a deeper consciousness, which is very true, because death can happen to any of us at any moment. And I knew he was, and I don't know in what way he said it. Did he say it in a facile way? Oh, I knew he was, no. Or did he say it, I knew he was not immortal? So you could, perhaps there was an emotion, but there was also a deep awareness there at the same time. I love the Stoics, so I like to believe that there was an awareness at the same time. Well,
thank you very much, Eckhart.
Title of the question is it possible to go to the state of presence directly? The question is Is it possible to be in the state of presence without before having questioned all our stressful thoughts? I think that Byron Katie would say no. Thank you. Okay, I'll read it again. Is it possible to be in the state of presence without before having questioned all our stressful thoughts? I think that Byron Katie would say no. Okay? For those of you who don't know Byron Katie's teaching, it's about questioning your stressful thoughts so that you don't believe in every thought that comes into your head anymore. So you ask things like, when a thought arises and you make a statement about a situation, a person, about yourself, about life, you ask yourself, do I know absolutely that this is true? For example. And other questions with which you address that thought. Now, the questioner says, can one be in a state of presence without before having questioned all our stressful thoughts? Well, there is no... The questioning of your stressful thoughts implies that there is already an awareness that's arising. Without an awareness of your thoughts, you can't even question your thoughts, because you would be your thoughts. So you wouldn't be able to step outside the thought. Consciousness would not be able to, at least partially, step outside the thought and from there look at the thought and question whether this is absolutely true or whether this is just one of many possible perspectives. So the questioning of your thoughts is inseparable from the arising of presence, although not for everybody in whom presence arises. It applies that they question their thoughts. The disidentification can happen in various ways. But the arising of presence always implies a disidentification from thinking. Questioning your thoughts is a way in which that happens, one particular way in which that happens. So you cannot question all your thoughts and then enter the state of presence, as the questioner implies. It's a simultaneous process. As you question your thoughts again and again as they arise, especially stressful thoughts means thoughts that cause you upset or suffering, then you begin to disidentify. And with the disidentification, presence or awareness grows. And when it's grown enough, thought loses its power to make you unhappy, loses its power to bring about a state of stress inside you, to make you suffer, basically. So as awareness arises, awareness grows, the power of thinking to make you unhappy and to distort your experience of reality diminishes. And that's the transitional stage. And then you come to a stage where stressful thoughts don't even arise anymore. But the most important thing is already when thoughts, if they do still arise, the intermediate stage, they are recognized as stressful thoughts, so they lose their hold over you. In other words, the mind loses its hold over you. There's no longer a total identification with who you are and your mind. And then in the awakened stage, stressful thoughts don't arise anymore. In other words, you don't tell yourself stories that make you unhappy or upset. And then to a large extent you can let things be. To a large extent you can move around life without an excessive interference of thinking. You can approach situations and people and let them be, even interact without judgments. That's an enormous sense of freedom that comes in. And you become free of external conditions. The external conditions no longer have power over you. You no longer give them that power. You only give them that power through your involvement in them, and the involvement in them happens through judgment and reactivity, which are unconscious. It's a wonderful thing when you don't need to judge people anymore. You'll just let them be. And one thing you notice then with people who are conscious in an awakened state, you don't hear them commenting negatively about anybody. It's not ultimately true. Any negative comment just strengthens the ego. Don't complain about anybody. They do what they do. What can you add to that by complaining? Situations are as they are. What can you add to them by upset, shouldn't, all those mind structures? He should have, he should not have. They shouldn't, they should. I should have. Why didn't I? Why didn't he? That complicates life. But that's most people's reality. So, with the awakened state, you become very simple and just very clear. And really, no situation is complicated anymore. And you don't even try to figure out what people's motivations are. They do what they do. And today's thief or dishonest person or whatever they do, maybe 10, 20 years from now they may be enlightened. So when you call a thief, then you've fixed him in your mind. You've created a conceptual reality for that person and stuck it on his head. But you cannot stick a conceptual reality on somebody's head without sticking an equivalent one on your head. And since the mind manufactures a conceptual reality for everybody with fixed ideas and opinions about people, often with a focus on the negative, often with a focus on their shortcomings. So you get trapped in prisons. You have a prison for everybody, a conceptual prison, not realizing that the more conceptual prisons you create for everybody else, the more you yourself get trapped in your own conceptual prison. Somebody else said that 2,000 years ago in slightly different words about judging others. But it's so prevalent, that mind pattern. And it's so satisfying to the ego, the false mind-made sense of self. With every conceptual prison that you make for somebody else, it feels strengthened in its sense of identity. The more you judge, the stronger the ego feels, because you have the authority. You are then the authority figure that judges. You are morally superior to every person that you judge and to any situation that you judge. This is the implication, the unconscious assumption. And imagine then millions of humans living in that way, forming a nation, or forming a religion, or any entity, collective entity. So the world cannot change unless those patterns change. And they do not change with the collective entities, they can only change with you. And it requires vigilance on your part to know whether or to what extent you're still doing it. As a spiritual practice, you could say, next time I complain about somebody or say anything negative, I'll notice it. Let's see if I can catch myself. And when you do, you don't need to beat yourself up. It's a success, it's not a failure. To catch yourself in a negative conditioned thought, to notice it, is, you don't say, oh, you see, I'm doing it again, how dreadful. No, it's a great success to catch a thought, and then, oh, wow, there it goes again. You don't even need to say, go away. It's enough to see it, and then it loses its power over you. If we do not take action, I do not believe that the planet will become destroyed, but we will destroy ourselves.
I don't really have a formulated question, but I'd like to hear you talk for a second. It's kind of been hinted at here and there, but talk more specifically about the situation of the planet, the ecological situation, without panicking, without getting self-righteous and all these other things. Clearly, a change of consciousness is necessary, but things also have to be done in real time, because these are processes happening in time. And so just if you had anything at all to say about that and how these two processes of consciousness and also changing things, doing whatever would be necessary for the planet, how this works together.
Yes, thank you. Are you engaged in that kind of work?
To some extent, and hoping to be more. Yes.
Well, one thing, as you know, I don't need to say it again, the foundation for any action you take is to let it arise from presence, rather than from a feeling of fear or anger, because those two are not very productive. What comes out of fear or anger is not productive. Presence is much more powerful. There's an enormous power in presence and true intelligence. Really intelligent action comes out of presence. So that's vital to know. There are many things that need changing in our relationship with the planet. Things seem to be going the wrong way right now. All I can say is do as much as you can to help change the way in which we live on this planet. Do what you can with peace in your heart. That's the main thing, with peace in your heart, because otherwise, without peace, the opposite of peace is war and conflict. So if we don't destroy the planet, we destroy ourselves through war and conflict. The planet, there's more to the planet. This is my intuitive realization, by the way. There is more to the planet than we realize. The planet is a being. It's not a rock floating in space with things growing on top. The planet is a living being. That many humans or scientists cannot accept that. What I mean is, it is pervaded by an intelligent energy field in the same way that your body is pervaded and held together and run by an underlying intelligence that keeps everything, the thousands of functions in your body, because the planet is another kind of body. The thousands of functions that need to be constantly coordinated and controlled, that keep this body alive, keep the atoms and molecules together, keep the organs from cooperating. No human or the greatest computer could possibly do that. Even now, we only understand a fraction of how our physical body operates. There's a vast intelligence built into it. When that intelligence says goodbye, then very quickly the atoms and molecules say goodbye to each other too, and then they depart, and then the form dissolves. The planet is also an intelligence, a being that is intelligent, and it has produced us in a way, not alone. There have been other factors. The sun is also more than a fireball. We think the sun is a ball of just energy. There's more to it than that. We think the sun is extremely hot. Well, hot is one way, but really what that means is the energy of the highest intensity, which our physical body register as extreme heat. The sun is also a celestial being. You don't need to believe me, by the way, but I'll just tell you what my intuitive realization is. And the planet has an intelligence also that one reason why we need to be active in protecting the planet so that we don't use these absurd ways of the resources of the planet, the absurd ways of getting energy, we need to go beyond that. There are other ways. The universe is infinitely abundant. The energy on the external level, the energy, obviously inexhaustible energy, comes continuously from the sun. And all the other energy forms that we discover on the planet are really transformed sun energy. It was once sun energy. So, and to use those is a very primitive way of using energy. And we need to, as soon as possible, and this is the task of scientists and so on, who also need to be present, to go beyond those primitive ways of using the energy that's left over by sun energy on the planet. The planet If we do not take action, I do not believe that the planet will become destroyed, but we will destroy ourselves. Or the planet, which has an intelligence, but it's just slow, because to a planet 100 years is nothing, 200 years is nothing, 1 second in your lifetime or less. The planet, if the planet feels threatened by humans, I firmly believe that it will eliminate humans. It can do that very easily. We are, because we are connected, our physical form is connected to the energy field of the planet. It's come out of the planet. So the planet could easily, even without violence, the planet could end all humans within 100 years without any act of violence by simply making males and females infertile. That would be an action taken by planetary intelligence. Say, these humans we can't have them anymore, that's too much. Or let's just get rid of 95% of them, and then they can have a new beginning and can try again. But it doesn't have to come to that. So before the planet takes action, and the planet is slow, we need to take action, but with peace, because otherwise we are unconscious beings. We'll just contribute. Even if in our unconscious action we could save the planet, we still wouldn't save ourselves, because we would create warfare if we are unconscious. There are many ways we can destroy ourselves, not just through destroying nature. There are other ways we can destroy ourselves, and we will if the shift in consciousness does not reach a sufficient number of people. But the essence of what I'm saying is peace in your heart. Do not fear. There's more to the planet than you realize. If the planet gets rid of you, it will.